Nice. Alright, welcome back everyone. So, this is some of the things in this week's demo. It's about World War II. Some of the main assets I've been using is Invector and MicroVerse. And of course the Synty Studios packs, which are basically those driving the entire thing. I had to write some custom scripts, very minimal, for a few things I wanted to add. But basically this demo, so far I haven't added any NPCs or anything yet AI, but I will, and of course just like my previous demos I will release a build so people can play with it themselves. I will add some NPCs, some soldiers, just a quick quest, and the idea is you start here and then you collect some weaponry and then you'll do your mission. Something that's unusual with this demo compared to others is the size. So already here we can see it's pretty far, but once we zoom out in a second you'll definitely see the size difference. Mainly it's, 9 terrains, big Unity terrains, right? All of the vehicles are not drivable. I will add some that is drivable, but mainly the only drivable vehicle the player should have in this demo is this Jeep. That's why it also has, it looks like a paint job. Basically I just found another Synty shader and I just dropped it on and I was like, yeah, it looks like repairs, that's okay. And the drive system I used for the player vehicle is, what's it called? Let's see if we can find it. It's this MMV Modern Military Vehicles. It's a nice system. I never used it before. I just got it yesterday and thought, let's give it a go. As for Invector, the only additional add-on, currently I also have the cover add-on installed, as you can clearly see. And then I got the FSM or AI FSM installed as well. Haven't really spent much time on those templates because time is ticking. Only 1 week, right? So I just took some of the existing and modified them to suit my needs. I tried to ask around, but nobody was really that helpful. So it was just to figure it out or go away, right? So we figured it out. The world itself is made with MicroVerse. If we turn off the cozy weather system, we can see everything, right? So the player is standing down there and we have these small islands. There's a city. It's just the city that came with the Synty pack from, I think it's called World War, or just War Map. I just plopped it in. Again, time limitations. Normally I would actually prefer to build a lot. I created this bridge. One thing I found missing in that pack was the legs. So I could extend it further down, so I just added some cubes, 3D cubes, right? No, bunker walls. Just to give it the impression of a standing wall, right? I built some German bunkers. And I used the Unity spline system to create the roads, and then I added the path maker from MicroVerse to add the texture and adjust the sides. You can see some places it's not ideal. If we add a light, it's easier to see. See, we have this funny face here, right? This is one of the mission goals, is actually to go and destroy this tower. So I'll add some guards around here and stuff like that. One thing I need to adjust, which just happened because I was using too many terrain layers, and you know Unity has this limitation of 8, I believe. So I converted everything to microsplat, and somehow it lifted various terrains, because this was at terrain height before. So I need to go over the different things. However, it should be fairly easy because this entire thing is placed as a MicroVerse game object. So I know there's a limitation for MicroVerse. I can't remember. Jason, he said something, limitation of 100 spawns, which I took as 100 individual game up, because alone this one has more than 100. The city over there is also one on its own. So if we go to objects, my war, there we go. So basically I added the main areas as an object. So let's say right here looks nice. I want to add a bunker. So I just drag in a bunker. And you can see it's all set up. It's modifying the terrain and everything. I can make my changes to it. So if you see some lag right now, that's basically because the project right now is on the same drive as my recording is going to. So sometimes the computer is a bit... I don't like your recording while working on projects. Of course, over here we also have a American FOB, forward operating base, or infantry base. And the idea is really, in this area I will turn this into like a war field. I might remove the trees or change it, add some terrain or something. And we'll have a war going on here. On purpose I made it so the NPC or the player shouldn't be able to swim or go in water, and if he goes in water, he's just... I'll set up something so he just gets spawned back at start. Because I want him to cross the bridge here, or the lowlands, and to complete the mission. There is a radio tower more here, and way over here there's a communication tower, control tower. So I'll just drop in, what's it called, Connect. They made this really nice compass. I'm gonna put that in. So when you start, you actually speak with one of the commanders at the airbase, and you'll get the mission, and these will pop up as targets, so you have to go and deal with it. But dealing with this will mean you have to cross, let's say, call it the front, that will be right here, between the US and German army. Over here is strictly enemy territory, so I'll set up some random patrols using FSM AI and Invector NPCs. You might have seen my work in progress video where I had some tanks and some soldiers shooting at each other. That's mainly for this purpose. So, oh, fucking flies. Let's jump into a setup scene. Yeah, let's start with building these prefabs. For MicroVerse. So basically this is just a empty terrain with nothing in it except a MicroVerse terrain and a texture on it. So let's create something we can use. So I go into my synth, I put everything in there, go to buildings, find something interesting. Or you could just make something interesting, right? Well, let's take this one. Zoom in. There we go. So this ruin. First thing I'm gonna do, we're going over the steps now. Prefab, unpack all. Let's see what's inside. There's doors, glass. Just gonna remove that. Destroyed. Building, giving it a name, so I know what I'm doing. Or pretend I know what I'm doing. I'm creating a empty child game object. And that's going to be the parent, because I want it at the center, zeroed out. Destroyed building 234. Sounds like I have a lot. Good. And I make the mesh a child of that, and I have my collider. And as we can see, we are already below terrain, so let's just see what's going on here. I think that's okay, because then we can take into account for terrain modifications when we put it in. So a little into the terrain is okay. And notice I'm only changing the height of the child object, not the parent. The parent is still at... oh, it's not. Now it's at 0. There we go. And then I add any decoration I might find. So let's say we've seen some combat here. So maybe we have a destroyed old German tank outside. I'm just gonna plop in the things I think could be interesting. A destroyed car next to it. Props. There's a lot of props. And also on this one I have the World War map, Apocalypse and BattleRoyale installed. So let's just search debris and only find prefabs. Just some decoration really. Good, I'm happy with that. Then I take these items, prefab, unpack completely, and child them to my building. And then I'm gonna right click, create empty parent, and I'm gonna call it decor, as in decoration. Select the decoration and the building, and I'm gonna make them static. Yes, they're just gonna stay there no matter what. My destroyed building, right click, create empty again. And this time I want to move it up so it's actually the same height as the destroyed building, because this is our working area. And this is actually where I will be creating my MicroVerse modification. So I'm just going to move this to the top, because once I drop it in to the scene I might want to make changes, so I don't want to browse around to find it. And this one I'm going to call clear stamp, as it will be. Duplicate, height stamp, texture stamp. And then you're like, ah, but you can just do it in one. Yes, I know, but sometimes I want to move the height stamp, but maybe not the clear stamp, and sometimes I want to move the texture stamp and not the height stamp. So I like to separate them. Clear stamp. Just make sure it's set to box. And then I'm just gonna scale it up. Or down, up, I guess. Why can't I see the box? Oh! We need to drop the entire thing under the MicroVerse game object. Now we should hopefully be able to see the box soon. Let's just continue while we wait for the thing to load. Height stamp I'm gonna set to override. Fall off is still box, but then I'm gonna set it to smooth step and leave it as is. Texture stamp. I'm gonna add one of the terrains I know is already in. I'm gonna set it to range. And let's just figure out why they are not showing up. Let's try to add one the intended way, just to troubleshoot. So height stamp. Oh! Classic mistake. I'm sure you already spotted what is wrong. Top right, I don't have gizmos enabled. Now I do. Okay, clear stamp. This is basically how much of the area we want to clear. Right now it's a box, we could set it to range instead. So this will clear the area of trees and details if there's anything when we drop it in, and I think this is fine. Blend, I guess this is fine. The range is basically how much it will be blending. So I like to make this somewhat bigger, and then just increase this range to get a nice transition. Height stamp, gonna make sure it fits. And I set it to all right, that means it will all right. Other modifications, it's not going to add or subtract or anything. And I'm gonna put that to range as well. And these are supposed to be -1. So they're same height as the building. No, this building. There we go. So if I move the entire thing, the terrain should move. You can see the terrain is coming with. Good. Let's make sure we have a large enough height stamp. So I just want to include the furthest point. And this one is range, smooth step also. That's so we get this nice edge, you can see. So if I move the entire thing, this is actually a good way to experiment, right? So now we can experiment with ranges and see what they really do. So if this is better, then I'll just make it bigger. Texture stamp. It should show up. I'm not sure why it's not showing. Oh! The range. Look at the range. It's 1, 1, 1. Let's just scale that up. So we don't need much because the terrain already have a texture when we put it in. I just want to make sure where I drop this, we have this type of texture. And that's why we could use anything that makes more sense if we wanted to. Cobblestone maybe, right? But then I would change it to a box, and I would reduce the box size to something like this. There we go. And then maybe actually around this cobblestone I also want grass to ensure there's grass. So I just duplicate this and drop it above. You have to remember MicroVerse does it in order, so above I put in grass. That actually means it's below the cobblestone, right? So we put in range, we increase the size, we add some noise, how heavy it's going to influence, and then the other one, blend, we can start blending. We add some noise because we want to maybe get like rough edges instead of round, something like that. So you just play with it. You can see how it's changing, right? So you just find something you like. It is important to change the stamp. I often forget, so I'm in world and I'm doing this and nothing is barely happening, and that's because it's looking at world scale. Change to stamp, and then we are only looking at our small object, and you can see we're getting better detail. Let's check the other one. It's also world, so let's change that to stamp. There we go. So we get that better transition over here. So in theory, if I move this to 0, it goes down. Now we could start maybe adding even more decor, because maybe there are some sheds or something around. Polygon wall, prefabs, buildings. maybe this one is here. Which actually gives us an opportunity to play with splines now inside MicroVerse, right? So I'm just gonna drop this into the core, prefab, unpack completely, make it static. Yes, change to children. On the entire thing itself, I'm gonna right click, spline, draw splines tool. And I could easily imagine somebody having a path from maybe the toilet around here. Something like this. I'm not gonna put one to the door because, well, it's kinda gravel, right? Now we got a spline. I'm just gonna rename it to path. Add component, spline, path. There we go. In the modify splat map, here we go. I have to choose what type of path I want. Well, let's put in dirt. We changed the Y. Oh, not this one. Here we can change the width of the width, the smoothness, and this is actually quite good because now we get this cover up of this rough edge from the tiles. Well, and it's also clearing trees. We can clear details. Don't do that. And that's our building done. So then I'm going into my folder where I keep these prepared things, and I'm just gonna drop it in as a prefab. Destroyed building. Clear it out, and then I'm gonna set it to 000 inside. Then I have this content collection in here, and I'm simply going to add one more at the bottom. And I'm just going to drag this in. Hit save. If I go to the MicroVerse browser, my war, it's here already, right? So we can drag it in, we can adjust it. And some of the objects I made are quite large, right? So here we go. That's the tent camp. Way more than 100 objects. The control tower. The city. The bunker. It's just made of a bunch of smaller assets, right? But here you can see how stuff is actually placed on top and not in the ground. I think that covers the parts of Microsplat pretty good for this demo at least. Then the other one was the sample scene where I was working out the kinks and challenges I had with the Invector. You can see it's even causing problems now. What's the problem? Can't add post-process layer to scene camera because it already exists. Yeah. First thing I'm gonna check is, do we have multiple cameras? I don't think so. So it must be this one causing problems. Yeah, we have two post-processing layers. Just gonna see, well, they're pretty much identical, so remove one. And then I'm gonna click player and hit F. There we go. So this was the setup, and I think that is the one I shared earlier on YouTube, showing the tanks fighting, but that was without the trees. So we could disable cozy, just add a light just for us right now, right? And MicroVerse, so if we take off the trees and the bushes, there we go. That's pretty much it, right? So player, I was creating the weapons from the prefabs from Synty and just using the Invector example weapons and change the meshes and functionality. I have a American soldier setup running on an FSM AI template, and this is basically just the default one. It must be this one. The only thing I changed was when they're shooting, they go straight to patrol after shooting instead of running to a body. And of course I made modifications to the weapons, the health, the layers, what enemies they're looking for. One thing I still need to add is to make them shoot at the tanks. So right now the tanks themselves, pretty interesting. So you can see in front of the tanks there is a box. That's the trigger to find the enemies. Once this trigger, it will be added to a list, and it will select a random target from the list. So I created this script called turret trigger. It's basically based on Invector's own trigger. However, Invector's own trigger was causing me quite a lot of problems because I didn't use all the components they had, and I took as an example the turrets from the cover demo scene added when you install the cover add-on. I just couldn't get it to work properly. I could get the turret to work just fine. Well, not fine, actually. It's not really that good for this type of thing. It's great for, let's say, humanoid versus humanoid, but it's not really good for vehicle combat. So the script is here. Basically, we're just collecting data, collecting the Invector rotate to target, which is used by the turret. Don't warn me again. And then we simply create a list and we run through the targets, and if a target exits the trigger, then we just remove it from the list. Also, when the target is dead, we check if it's dead and then it's removed from the list. The turret itself is this V rotate to target, which is trying to find the target or aim at the target, and then we have the auto shoot weapon, which I enabled from my own trigger. And I think this is one of the main problems, really, because this script is for me right now just auto shooting whenever possible, so I need to adjust the trigger speed. I have some other assets, and I could easily imagine myself putting this on another type of controller, vehicle controller, and just use parts of the Invector scripts. Because if I have to shoot at the Invector humanoids, this is the easiest way to get it done. Just to make sure we combine the weapon and the damage. If I have to add a different system, then I need to find out where the damage is applied and check for that. So it's the easy way around. It's probably not the best. As for the tracks, you can see it has 22 wheels, 2 tracks. And when this is checked driving, it will start moving forward. And then of course we have the track speed and the movement speed of the vehicle itself. And then you might wonder, where is it going? Well, you can see move target. I add this child, so it's supposed to move to this direction, but this is a child, so it will just continue to move forever. It's fine for setting up, but the idea is when I then drop these into the scene, I'll move this target to something specific, and then it will only drive to that point and stop and then stay there and shoot. So in real war you will often see tanks being half buried into like a tank ditch. So I want these to drive up to this ditch, or at least be driving while the player passes, and he can join the combat. And when they reach the ditch, they will just stop there and shoot, unless they get killed, because I added the health controller on them. And added, well, they got 300, that should maybe be 3000, right? Because you can shoot them with a rifle right now. What else is there? Well, let's turn that off and hit play. See what happens. Oh yeah, the player starts with nothing and it's really loud. So I'm just gonna grab these things. So pistol auto-equipped. Then we have both German and German assault rifle or American assault rifle. Or it's actually more like a machine pistol. I don't know why it's not rendering right now, but hey. And the RPG, of course. And they're all working. Okay, so this tank actually shot that tank over there. That's nice. You can see they don't have colliders, they're driving through each other right now. There we go. Tank down. So the German soldiers I need to update. You can see they're still running to a dead target. And this one, he's basically going to a waypoint that's moving at the same speed as himself. And all the movement. I think I forgot to mention that, but we can look or stop. It's Invector. It comes with a pathing system, really. And you can see I have these waypoints. It's just to test it. So waypoints, waypoint area is called even. It's similar to splines. You just drop this in, hit edit, and then basically you can start adding waypoints. Right? Exit edit mode. Oh, and when you see this is a good example. That basically means it's either below or above terrain. There's something like this. It just needs to be close to terrain, then it goes away. On the soldiers themselves, the prefabs, so here's the German soldier, you can see on the shooter manager, no. Oh, here we go. Control AI shooter. There's a tab called waypoint, you just drop it in here and he will start following the waypoints. Pretty simple. But it takes a very long time to set up. And then of course I added Cozy's weather as usual. Because I just like the mood it gives. You can see it's completely changing the environment. And of course, where is it? MicroVerse, here we go. So bushes and fruit trees. Just some of the standards dropped in. Of course I had to adjust them because I wanted this scattered layout. Just for the testing, I want to see what's going on. What else do we have? Setup scenes. Oh yeah. The drivable car. Basically that comes from, as I mentioned in the beginning, the MMV mod. Where is it? Demos. Where are the scenes? I have a couple of tank controllers. One I used before is called what's it called? Oh, and it's URB, as you can see. What's it called? Well, let's just check what it's called. Tank. Oh yeah, physics tanks maker. Really like that. The only problem I really have with this is the setting up of tanks. I don't know how many times I've set up a tank or a vehicle and followed the guide to the letter, and then it's not working. And then other times I just delete the add-ons, I add it again, and it's working. And you need to add the scripts yourself, you need to add anything. That's really annoying. What I really like with the other one, this one, modern military vehicles, is I add one script and then I add some scriptable objects, and the scriptable objects are the ones I'm adjusting speed, power, tension, etc, etc. But to the vehicle itself I add one script and then it's a vehicle. I show, of course, I tell it what are the wheels on left side, what are the wheels on right side, and how much can they turn. Simple stuff like that. And then I just make my fine-tuning later. And that's really nice, really nice. I enjoy that. I also think this one is URP only, but as you know, when we're talking about assets like this, it doesn't matter if we're talking built-in URP or HDRP or any scriptable render pipeline, because that's about graphics. And the code will still work. The only thing that might not work is the shaders, because they have different code or something. And that's also why it's sometimes very easy to translate materials between URP and built-in, because it's really only a matter of the shaders for them. The code should always work unless it's specifically coded for URP, and that's rarely the case, because I don't see a lot of people doing shader coding. Especially now that you have stuff like Amplify Shader and the shader editor, it's drawing. Which is good, of course. It opens up the universe to a lot more people, and I think the more people that has their hands on these things and easier access, the better. Well, maybe not better. The more things we'll see also, and eventually we'll also see better things than when it's reserved to a few people. And as you can see here, the blue lines, that's the spline paths. Oh, right. One thing I need to show you. We're gonna create a new scene. Just in here. Something I had to learn the hard way. Let's call the scene the hard way. So, empty scene, I want to create a new terrain. So I right click here, go to MicroVerse, create a scene with terrain. Oh, that's nice. I add a texture, I make it a fit, 512, 512, 1024, very nice. I adjust the height to 80, there we go, nice terrain. I add some texture to it, change it to global, wow, that's beautiful. Object, let's go at water, very nice. So we got a setup here, right? And then I realize, actually, I want to work with multiple terrains. Okay. So before I do that, I make sure my root folder is not spammed with terrains. You can see there's one and one new. And I'm pretty sure those belong to this one. But we'll check. Always check, because terrain stuff has a way of, well, I won't say mess up, but there's so much memory allocation and disk writing, it's very easy for errors to occur. And a very simple mistake by the user, in this case me, can ruin all the work. Right? Okay, so here we have the terrain, and you can see this one is the terrain 1. This one I actually don't know where it belongs. So let's just create a folder, because it's still used somewhere. Trash, _trash. And I already forgot what is this called. This is called new terrain 1. Okay, so I'm gonna move my new terrain into trash. There we go. Okay, so in my route I only have this one terrain right now. And now I want to expand the terrain, right? So normally we click terrain, we click this, and I make sure it says mirror, because when I mirror it will try to imitate what you already have, right? Oh, that's nice. Nice, 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 nice. Okay, beautiful. That's very similar to what I did before in the other world. Very nice. Okay, and here is where. So we only have the texture on the center right now. As you can see, these are new. They have no data. They have no connection. They only exist. Semi-visible as we can see them now, and in the folder structure as we can see. So I just hit Control Save, and then I think, oh, if I want to use these in MicroVerse, why don't I just take them? And because right now you cannot use MicroVerse to texture them, you have to have them in the same structure, right? So I'm just gonna take them and drop them in there. Oh, okay, now it's all good, right? I can click them, I can do stuff to them. Yes, very nice. I can even go here and I can save. Very nice. Then I go to this and I select the texture and I just add the same. Oh, they're all gone. And then I look in my folder. Oh, they're still there. Okay. I can see in the structure they're still there. And if I click somewhere, oh, it's still here. But now it's flat. I'm like, what the? Okay. So delete everything. Go in here and I'm gonna delete all these. And now I will show you a way I found working. Of course, you can create all the terrain before you add MicroVerse, or you can do it afterwards, doesn't matter. So let's create a new terrain with MicroVerse. Go into the browser, find a nice height. I want to make sure I have something on the edge so we can generate outside, right? So this one, for example, yes. This is, by the way, Ultimate StampIt collection from Rowan. There we go. Uncheck that. Put height to 80. Very nice. Just add the. No. Take one of the examples. This one, wasteland. Very nice. And add some water. Yeah, this is nice. And let's repeat the process of creating some islands. So I click on the terrain, I click on extend, and I start generating the terrains. Okay, now we're in the same situation as before, but actually we want to save this now. So I click outside, I actually take this terrain now out of MicroVerse, and then I simply delete MicroVerse. I hit save. There we go. So we still have the shape now and the terrain. Then I right click, MicroVerse, create MicroVerse for existing terrains. Yes, we already made a backup. None of your business, by the way. Okay, now they are packed under MicroVerse. And if I go into textures and I add, well, this one. Now I changed my mind, I want this instead. Set it to global. There we go. Beautiful. And I add my water. There we go. Now we got it set up correctly. Except for, you can see, the texturing of the edges. We still have the hard lines of connecting terrains together. But that's not from MicroVerse, that's actually from Unity, because the way it's generated. So it's trying to match and then change immediately, and we get like this line. There are of course many ways you can fix that. Unfortunately, one of the most common ways is manually by taking a brush, smooth. There we go. Smooth that out. Need to make this one. And then we can update the textures, right? So we can see we lowered this into a normal valley instead. We could actually now just get rid of that, add something else. Hopefully it's... Oh, you can see even now it's even more clear. Not so bad here, but once you go uphill, it's really bad. And no matter how much you add, you can see it's going to be a problem until this is smoothed out. I'm not sure if there is a tool that can help us do this. I'm sure there is. I never had a need for it before. So my only solution is actually to start working on smoothing terrains like this. I'm not sure why it's not updating. Oh! Yeah, of course. Okay, there's something we forgot. When we make changes to the terrains now, so this terrain here, we made this change, it's not saved. There is a button somewhere. I found a button where I needed to hit update terrain, and I don't believe it's this one. Because as soon as I do something now, this will just jump back up. For some reason. I'm pretty sure as soon as well, let's drop in something just to... You can see. It's changing it immediately as soon as I make a terrain update. So it has not saved it. Oh yeah, that's actually a great idea. We could add a height modification to this with MicroVerse. And just bring that one down here, align with view. And then we could play around with modifying it, right? Until we find something we're happy with. So there's probably a functionality called a blend, maybe. That could be a solution. And then on the edge we choose range and we choose full range, almost. And then on the size, could do something like this. And I'm not sure if we can do a height noise. Multiply. Yeah, I really need to look up each of these functions because I don't seem to have the right understanding of how it's working, because when I was working with 3D models, when I add something, it's just like adding, like math, 1 + 1 is 2. So if I take a shape and add it to another, I got... But clearly this is not the case here. So I need to find out what the different functions actually do. Of course, we could just experiment and see what's... It looks like we are just touching the box edge here with this one, right? However, I don't think you can rotate these. It doesn't follow that logic, no. difference. Multiply. Still keep the ridge which we were trying to get rid of. Oh yeah, here we could tilt, of course. Okay, so there are some options we can play with. It seems to me that it's faster to just smooth it out and then save it. And I don't remember why I can't save now. Anyway, that's not important either. We got it sorted before. What else did we add? Let's check our stuff. So of course we got the Genesis, which I only use for testing, and the nice new feature of miniature thumbnail creation. And distant lands, that's cozy well. Oh, animations. That's right. I don't save that. Get rid of those. Animations. Yeah. So, for example, this guard I have here, it was last night before I went to bed, I had this guard, and I want this trigger, so when you arrive at the trigger, he stands attention, and the boom opens. And again, we saw it last time when I was using Malbots for the Space Cowboy demo, and it was working great. Malbots has this amazing trigger and interaction feature, very similar to Unity event system, and I'm pretty sure it's running Unity events in the background, but it's so super easy to set up. I tried to replicate that in Invector here, but sometimes it was triggering, sometimes it was not triggering, and I just... So I ended up doing it the old school way, and I really mean old school way. So I have my trigger box with a script, and the only thing the script does is when the player enters, we set these two animation states, one for the boom and one for the soldier. Very manual and very bad way to set things up, because you can only use it in, well, this situation, and if you have something with exactly the same setup where you have two animation controllers. I just needed something fast. The soldier itself is just a Synty asset with nothing, and I added a animation controller. So he has an animation called handgun idle. This is basically just him standing. And if we look at the transition, we could move that. So now we see him. Yes, and the same for the exit, just the other way. The boom, I did it the old school way. I took the animator, I created, animation tab, and I created the animation here, right? So if we, we can move it here. We'll go to scene view, and then you can see it opens, and I created one for idle, which is nothing is going on, but I needed it, and one for close, which means it starts open and just closes. On the boom itself, I added an animation controller and, animator, which is off for some reason. Let's leave it off. I'm actually curious now if it's working when it's off. Let's get the player over here. Player, align with view. Save. Let's see if it works. it should work. And I don't know why I turned it off. Yeah, it works. And when we leave... Yes. And the most important thing is, it's consistent. The only reason the soldier is not consistent is because the animation is not exiting. But that's fine. Basically, the idea is you only leave here once and then never come back. Okay, so it is working, even though it's off. Maybe that's why it's complaining. Failed. No, that's just Unity being Unity. And this is just Synty being Synty. Yeah, that's fine. And of course, the vehicle itself. Last night I decided I need a vehicle because this map is too big to run in decent time. Assassin's Creed size map, right? So we needed some sort of vehicle to get around fast to just do this demo in reasonable time. So I added this, or I used the modern military vehicle pack to make this vehicle drivable. And there's nothing underneath here really except the Invector stuff. So you can see here we have the wheeled vehicle script. This is actually the one that is controlling the vehicle. And the audio source for the vehicle, just do it like that. But then I need to update it. We'll do that later. And then the input controls for the vehicle. These are off, so basically when you come up close, you can see the mesh render is also off. That's just the original mesh. We have a box instead now. And then I added the Invector trigger. So I have this called outside trigger, and I have this one called inside trigger because it's just teasing me. It's not so simple. It's not so easy to set up when you don't use it on a regular basis. Basically, it's a trigger script with an event system. So in theory, you could just put in a normal script. I think I got a million of trigger scripts that triggers from a box collider and runs events. That's what it's doing. Of course, this has a lot more options we can do with animations, but I don't need. I just need a trigger. I wanted to give it a go, and then it has this list. This, however, I think is extremely nice. We have this event with delay, so you put in delays to ensure things are done in the right order. I think we all try to code something or set up something, and then it does it in the wrong order, and it's like, well, why is it doing this? But here we can put in like a time delay, and we are sure it's done in the right order, so it's working. I'm struggling with getting the Invector character to work as I want it to work when driving. So basically what I'm doing is, you can see here we turn the character into a kinematic and we turn the trigger into or collider into a trigger. We stop all inputs. In the Jeep, we make the player a child of the Jeep, and then we hide the player. Basically, we hide the mesh, and then we set a dummy driver to true. And if we look here, and I enable this, we have a driver here with his own animation controller. Once this is true, it enables the outside trigger so we can exit the vehicle and disable itself. And basically the other one is exactly the same but in reverse. So when let's not maximize. So if we go to the vehicle, let's just mute that. There we go. And we enter. There we go. You saw the small jump the vehicle did. That's because when you're not in the vehicle, it's kinematic. And I disable kinematic when I want to move it. So basically, now it's working as I wanted, right? And I made it very, very stiff in the settings, so, because there are some collider issues. But if we look at the scene, you can actually see if we select the player Jeep, and now we have the player, he's a child, but the player is actually standing right there next to the car, which means when we start driving, it's hanging on the side. So if I needed to do something additionally now to make this working, I need to add another camera state, and this is where actually I think Invector shines a lot. It's in the player setup, and I think that's the main reason I really enjoy using Invector. Is we have all these small adjustments we can do. When he's holding a weapon, we can do IK adjustments when we're doing something, but also further, I think it's this one. No. Somewhere we have a manager. Yeah, that's a problem. I'm looking through all of these every time I need to find something. Of course, camera settings. There is a camera controller somewhere. You can adjust. Oh, of course, maybe it's on the camera itself. Hello, Martin. Oh. Yes, here we go. These states, they are so amazing. So if anything, I need to do more. Wow, that's good English. Next thing I want to do, if I wanted to do something else, is create a new camera state. I just switch back to this one, leave it like this for now. But once I enter the car, the new camera state would be a bit off or more centered on the car and a bit higher. Because I don't need a second camera to be enabled. Invector already, when you hit start, we can do that. Let's just make sure we don't go into full screen again. Here we go. Play unfocused. On the scene, look at the left, we have the camera right here. When I hit play, it will jump out, unparent itself. There we go, it's up here now. And that's really good. That's really, really good, because that means we can use this for anything we want to do. So instead of adding a vehicle camera, now I can just create a new camera state for when I'm in a vehicle. And I can set this up at runtime. That's really something. That's really good. That's like next level of helping people along. The alternative is really to set up a secondary camera with a secondary camera controller, disable and enable it as you enter exit the vehicles. So Invector really has some very big pluses, but it also has some very big drawbacks. And one of my main drawbacks right now is the trigger system and the input system. It's still running on the old input system, and I understand it's complex to set up. I made a video about that before, how to change the old system to a new system without changing too much of your existing work, but it's 22 and the old new, which is really not that new, input system anymore, has been out for 2-3 years now. So I guess it's time to move on. It's not because it's better or anything than the old one. The reason I like the new input system is because it's easier for me to make it work with a menu, or make it work so people can reassign key buttons. If you notice games on Steam, for example, new release games, and there's no way to reassign buttons or no way to change the mouse if you're left-handed or something like that, you'll get a lot of bad reviews immediately. Even though we all agree, at least many developers agree, we use VASD as input controller for third and third person, right? If we're using a... Let's see. controller like these, right? Thumbstick is controls, right stick is for camera. And we can just fix that in. And it works like that by default. The problem is some people like to change that. And usually those people are very loud, right? So people enjoying what you have done, you won't hear anything from, because they rarely give any feedback. You will always hear feedback from people who have some sort of criticism. And that is one of the reasons we should be sure to implement stuff like menus where you can reassign stuff for the player, the end user. You have to keep the end user in mind always, not you yourself as a developer or me. The end user, who is going to play your game, what age group, is this age group a type of people that is prone to maybe change controllers because, I don't know. Things to consider developing your game, right? As a developer, I don't want to spend days or longer trying to modify a existing input system because I wanted to use something, and in the end what people usually do is they end up writing their own character controller anyway, because the ones we can get either from Unity or elsewhere, they just don't fit the task. They're extremely good for learning, and you get an idea and it's easy to get something up and running fast, but of course there are some challenges. Alright, I think the music is really going crazy. I'll sign off for today. Hope you enjoyed the demo. Link is in the description below, and of course I'll put a zip build on Google Drive so you can download and play that. Any feedback, drop it in the comments or join the Discord and let me know. Other than that, have a great day and enjoy.